So what we're covering today, I think for Sec 2, you should have been exposed to expository, right? So today we are going to look at a checklist to evaluate. Basically, understand from the teacher's perspective how the teacher actually evaluate your essay. Okay, I've seen some of your responses and I've given you comments. I think really thumbs up to some of you who make the effort to write the essay. Okay, and I've given you some responses. You can actually go into your student account and take a look at the feedback given to you. Okay, so from the teacher's perspective, how does the teacher evaluate your essay? Because you want to get high scores for your essays, right? Then you need to know how your teacher actually mark your essays. So you know what your teacher wants, you know what the marker is expecting of you, then you will do well for your expository. Okay, so two parts to it. Like I said, the O-level English paper has so many components. Okay, so it's impossible for us to go through all in a day. So we will be touching on compo today, particularly expository. And then as usual, our current affairs, okay? Yeah, so for the sake of Kabilan, right? Yeah, for the sake of Kabilan, we'll just touch a little bit on this. Basically, we do current affairs because we want to build on your general knowledge. Then you can apply that to your spoken interaction for oral. You can also apply that for your expository writing as well. And by knowing more about current affairs, I think it helps you in understanding comprehension text as well. Okay, so that's a consistent effort we make here at 88 Tuition. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to touch on compo. Now, there are three things that your teacher touches on: content, language, and tone and register. But the marks given to you are actually 10 marks content, 20 marks language. Okay, I'm going to share with you the marking scheme for O-level writing. Yeah, give me a second while I retrieve the document. This one. Okay, so this is the GCE O-level marking scheme for writing. Section B is seed writing. I will not touch on that today because our focus today is expository, which is actually continuous writing. Okay, so we'll move down. Okay, so section C is your continuous writing. What is the assessment criterion for content? Like I said, content is 10 marks. So you will be aiming for at least a band 4, right? Because out of 10, I think you at least should aim for a 7 out of 10. So how do you achieve 7 out of 10 at least? You need to make sure that all aspects of the task are addressed with some development. So for example, if the question is, what can failures teach us? Okay, so expository, right? So in this case, you have to make sure you address failures. What does it mean? Right? Define failure. You need to address the part whereby the things that the failure teaches us. So all aspects must be developed. Some development, I would say. Okay. But if you want to achieve like a super high band, like band 5 with 9 or 10 out of 10, you need to make sure all aspects are fully addressed and with elaboration. Okay, and developed in detail. So you're not just going to touch on, define failure, that's all. Okay, you can touch on failure and then maybe give some examples, some personal anecdotes about it. So you develop it in detail using different methodologies. Okay, so that's assessment criteria for content. So we shouldn't be aiming for 3 and below. Yeah, band 3 and below. So we should be aiming for band 4 at least. Okay, that's for content. Oh, yeah. Okay. So then the next part, sorry. Let me get it on screen again. Yeah. Okay. So content is done. So maybe before I introduce you the marking scheme for language, we'll go through content first. Okay. Remember just now it says that it should be well developed, right? And all the points being addressed. So in terms of content, here's a checklist that you can use. Right? You need to make sure that your introduction is clear, and because it's an expository, this is very important. You need to have a thesis statement. Why? Because the thesis statement will give your reader a direction of what to expect for your entire essay. Okay, so for example, what can failures teach us? Failures can teach us to be humble, right? Failures can teach us to be resilient and something. So you, in your thesis statement, you clearly state all these things that you're going to discuss on in the upcoming body paragraphs. And it has to be clear because it gives your reader a direction. Okay, so next one, planning. Now, your teacher will roughly know whether you have planned. Okay, when I say planning, I don't mean you spend like half an hour planning, because you have to be strategic about it. The entire paper one is 1 hour 45 minutes. Do you have so much time? Because you have to cover editing, you have to do your situational writing, and also your continuous writing, all under 1 hour 45 minutes. So if that's the case, I'm not expecting you to plan for half an hour, but you have to at least come up with the topic sentences. Okay, that means you roughly plan, okay, what's going to be in your intro, what's going to be in your body paragraphs, and what's going to be in your conclusion. Okay, now the important thing is you must make sure you have your topic sentences. So thesis statement is usually in your introduction, then your topic sentences are in the remaining body paragraphs. Okay? Then in terms of content, you need to show the teacher that you have developed it using various methods of elaboration, right? So going back to the the benchmark here is that all aspects must be addressed with some development if you want to score a band 4. Right? So what do we mean by developed? Okay, actually it means this part here. Okay, mainly this part. Your points must use various methods of elaboration. So for example, you do not want to use personal anecdotes for all the body paragraphs, because that means you don't really have a lot of methods on hand. Okay, you might just want to use like personal anecdote for one of your points. Then after that, the rest you maybe want to use facts and figures and statistics. Then another point, another body paragraph, maybe you want to use definition. You define first, and then maybe you can talk about some other pointers, like maybe you have like reference to maybe a quote or something, a quote or a proverb that you can use. Okay, so you want to show the marker that you have different ways of elaborating your points and not just using the same method again and again. And actually, I don't recommend you to use too much of your personal anecdote, because then it becomes very personal. It doesn't really have substance. Okay, once is fine. You can use personal anecdote to elaborate on one of your points, but not all. Yeah. So you must make sure that your supporting ideas are well developed and you focus on the topic sentence. Okay, the content is refreshing. You have to interpret things as intangibles. Okay, meaning it's not something that you can change, but it's something that you would like to explore, and also what are the values or ideas that encompasses the topic that is given to you. Okay, so it's not something that we can change, like for example, failure, but what are the things that encompass around it? You don't want to change the topic, because the moment you do that, then you have the tendency to write out of topic. Okay. Then the next one is you should be ordering the 3 things, or rather the 3 points you have. Generally, a good guide for expository is you have to have at least 3 points. So intro, then body 1, body 2, body 3, then your conclusion. So 5 paragraphs in total. So for the 3 points in your body paragraphs, you will just need to order them in terms of importance to you. Okay. And lastly, conclusion, you have to reiterate the thesis statement. Now, there are many ways to start conclusion. I think we've discussed about that before, but we're going to discuss more about it next lesson. Next lesson, we're going to touch on, not next lesson, 2 lessons from now. Okay, we're going to touch on how to write body and conclusion. So different methods. So why do we need to learn that? because ultimately the goal we want to achieve is we want to use various methods. That's our goal, right? So today, of course, we can't cover so many things. We're gonna, I think it's in tutorial 16, now it's 14, right? Tutorial 16, we're gonna touch on ways to write your conclusion as well as your body paragraph. So far, okay, everybody? See, I can't see your faces. That's why I don't know whether you're okay. I can only see Kit Ming's face. Yes, Zuo Sherman, good. Kieran, are you there? Kabilan? Yes, great, wonderful. Cool. Okay, now let's move on to language part. Okay, now we'll take a look at the marking scheme for language. In terms of language, they look at these three aspects: organization of your ideas. Why do they see language in organization? Because by using transitional words, you help to organize your ideas. So that's language actually. A lot of people might think organization comes under content, but how you organize actually requires language. Okay, do you use like a variety of like transitional words to help you present your ideas coherently? So that is under language. Clarity of expression, basically that is in terms of grammar, right? Grammar, vocab, different grammar structures, your sentence variety and all. So all this is clarity of expression. Do you express your ideas clearly? Or is it like, past tense, but you write present tense? So is it in the past or is it in the present? So it's not clear. Okay, so you need to make sure your grammar is precise. Yeah. And then lastly is the accuracy of language. So accuracy of language, punctuation, spelling, all this. Okay. So to get a band 4, minimally band 4, we're aiming 13 to 16, right? So for band 4, it has to have coherent presentation of ideas with some cohesion between paragraphs. So this part here is basically referring to your organization of ideas. It must be cohesive, okay? And the presentation of ideas is coherent. Okay, now for vocab and grammar, I think this we've covered a lot. Ever since your primary school, I think your teacher has been covering on grammar structures a lot. So this is something that I think by now your grammar should be quite okay. Okay, but at times, of course, you might make some grammatical errors. But we try to avoid as much as possible. Yeah. Then lastly, of course, things that we can work on will be punctuation. Spelling should not be the problem now. I think unless you use overly ambitious words, if you're not sure how to spell, then I think it's best to avoid it. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, that's for language. So what is the checklist that we have here? Here, okay. So in terms of language, I think we talked about that just now. Tenses is something you want to watch. Yeah, under grammar. Then sentence variety. Are you using a combination of simple, compound, and complex sentence? Or are you just using simple sentences? Okay, if you're just using simple sentences, then it implies to your marker that you don't really vary your sentence structures and it can be a bit dull. Okay, then you won't score so well for language also, right? And then lastly is, of course, word choices. Word choice reflects on for this one, you want to use words that appeal to the senses. Like I said, you want to create a vivid imagery. Yeah. And form the images in the mind. So you want to create a vivid imagery in the reader's mind, right? Like I said, you don't just tell the story, you want to show the story. Okay, you want to make sure they can imagine. Yeah. So that's for language. And lastly, we have tone and register. Actually, tone and register falls under your language as well, because your tone, is it formal or informal, right? So the style of your tone, oh, sorry, this one I've not covered yet, huh? Oh, in terms of language as well. Okay, let's talk about style. Style, like for example, you want to use a lot of figurative phrases. Actually, for expository, you can apply some of them, but you don't necessarily have to use a lot of figurative phrases. One or two, I think, is good enough. Okay, like for example, the ocean of life, born with